We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you is Thursday, October 23rd here in Seoul. I'm Isuju, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Grace.
Great to be here.
Great to have you, and also Fabius with us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're almost at the end of the week, just one more day to go. And as we wrap up another busy week, I thought we could talk something about a little lighter today, something that actually says a lot about who we are, something that seems random, but it's not. It's colors. So we see them everywhere, but they also reflect our moods, our personalities, and even our choices. So let's start simple. What's your favorite color, Grace?
Well, my favorite color is green, I would have to say. Ever since I was young, I've just gravitated toward green. I don't know why. It makes me just feel calmer. It's pleasing to look at. And the fact that I like plants and nature probably has something to do with it too. But it's interesting because I don't own many things that are green because it's hard to match and it sticks out compared to other more neutral colors. And I don't really like to stand out. Most of the time most of the items though that I'm drawn to aren't green. Most of the items that I'm drawn to though are like more neutral colors, but I just like looking at green. I don't know why.
I think certain colors do make you feel more relaxed. But I know what you mean about how you don't want to stand out, and we'll talk more about that later in the show. But so what about you, Fabio?
Well, I love this topic and I take this very seriously.
Okay.
See, I joke with my friends and even on social media that I'm Aqua Boy Fabio, and that's because that is my absolute favorite color. I'm talking about aquamarine, teal, turquoise, cyan, all of these shades that you could find, for example, in the Maldives. I also tend to wear only this color, but I usually go for white, especially because, as Grace mentioned, sometimes these bold colors can be a little bit hard to match. However, I also buy a lot of colors in this type of shades because that is my favorite shade. Although, well, I try to exclusively keep to these colors because for me it represents freshness, that kind of like summery vibe, but also elegant. But it is true that sometimes, you're not in the mood and want to just keep with the neutrals.
Isn't it hard to try to find everything in that color though?
It's hard to find, but once you have everything in that shade, it's pretty easy to just combine it.
That's true. White and teal also that looks good together, right?
Exactly.
Right. So colors are all around us, from the clothes we wear to the spaces we live in, but we don't always think about what they mean or why we're drawn to some more than others. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more. Colors are all around us, but we don't always stop to think about them. Our preferences for certain colors are often also shaped by culture. For example, Koreans are known for favoring specific colors in clothing and daily life. But it's not just Korea. Every country has its own symbolic colors. So today on News Generation, we'll explore why Koreans tend to prefer certain colors, take a look at how other countries view color, and even share some personal color recommendations. So as we just saw in the video, one trend that's been catching attention overseas is the colors Koreans tend to wear. From everyday outfits to street style, people around the world have been noticing a striking pattern, so particularly the colors themselves, and it's raising questions about why these choices are so popular. So what is it about the colors of people's clothes in Korea that sparks so much curiosity, Grace?
Well, recently, Korean culture has been gaining more attention than ever before because of Korean music, dramas, and content. So naturally, people have been noticing that Koreans wear a lot of black instead of colored clothing, and this has become a popular topic on social media these days. Some even say that there are a lot of penguins on the streets in the wintertime in Korea because you'll see almost everyone wearing the same outfit, a long black puffer jacket with furry slippers or boots. And I have to admit, I also own a long black puffer jacket.
I actually do as well. And I've also seen a lot of these posts online. People saying Koreans only wear black, especially in winter. It's funny, but it's kind of true. Everyone seems to be in long black padded coats. But I'm curious, Fabio, as a foreigner, have you noticed that? Do you feel that way too?
I also have a long black padded coat.
So all of us do here.
Even though I try try to stick to white and aqua colors, you know, that penguin look is just something you cannot really avoid easily here in Korea. It's also because black is very convenient. You know, that is a very expensive item and something that you probably have to wear every single day throughout winter. So having a color like black is going to be easier to manage than maybe a color like white, and also definitely less flashy than a neon color, for example. So it's going to be a little bit more easy to match it with different clothes and easier to, you know, maintain, because white can get dirty quite easily, even though white is actually the second most prominent choice. And outside of winter, we also see Koreans sticking with neutrals, and that is because well, patterns and different types of like prints and logos are less visible these days, and people find comfort in that type of minimalistic approach, which a lot of the Korean brands, fashion brands, are also striving for. So I do think that, well, there's a lot of reasons behind it. For example, when it comes to black, there's always the saying of black is slimming, or black always looks good, and that is because it absorbs all of the light, so it's hard to see the details, and even if the fabrication is poor, it never looks tacky. It always looks neat and elegant, right?
Right, like you said, it's hard to go wrong with something simple colors like black.
Exactly.
So now I'm really curious. We actually have data to prove that Koreans mostly wear black. It feels true when you walk around the streets, but is there something that shows in numbers? Grace, can you tell us more about this?
Sure. In fact, according to a survey conducted by Gallup Korea, we can see that black clothing takes the #1 spot for color preference of clothing in Korea. White came in second at 11%, and blue came in third at 9%. It's interesting because black has been at the top of the list for the past 20 years of this kind of survey. And even the younger generation, who generally has a bolder, more expressive sense of style, prefer to wear all black head to toe, as it's considered to be very chic and fashionable. According to a sales analysis of a clothing brand, black clothing was the best seller among teens. And we mentioned how there are tons of long black puffer coats on the streets in the colder seasons, but this seems to be almost like a uniform for middle and high school students, and also a lot of college students wear this as collegiate jackets in universities.
I agree. So I feel like when you walk around Seoul, it's just black coats pretty much everywhere, but I didn't realize it's actually been a top choice for 20 years.
Wow.
Still, I wonder if Koreans stick to black for everything. I mean, cars is also a big thing. So, Fabi, what did you find?
Well, interestingly enough, even though black is preferred in most areas, when it comes to cars, most Koreans prefer their cars white. According to a survey by a global paint company, 1 out of 3 Koreans want to have their car in a white color, a vehicle that is white. Different experts point out different reasons, but all of them make a lot of sense. For example, it's great for visibility on the road. It's also a standard color, so that means that it's probably going to be easier to take care of. And then culturally, Korea is pretty much influenced by this thought of not wanting to stand out in the wrong way.
So right, white cars is another safe option. That's really interesting. I never realized how strong those color preferences were. So Koreans wear black, drive white, almost sounds symbolic in a way. So why do you think Koreans prefer these particular colors? Fabi, do you think cultural history could play a role in this?
I do feel like culturally, the Korean culture is more about shining through modesty in a very subtle way instead of in a flashy way, which I feel like is more common in Western countries because of the individualism, right? And Korea's society, for that reason, places a very high value in looking presentable and harmonious. But at the same time, even though a lot of Koreans try to go for neutral tones, that doesn't mean that color is not appreciated in Korea. For example, color analysis, personal color analysis, is right now a big sensation, a big phenomenon all over the world. For example, we have this color palette over here. This is what you would get in a regular type of color analysis in Korea. And I have seen a lot of friends here in Korea trying to take this palettes with them and trying to do some shopping when it comes to clothes. But still, many Koreans stick to the neutrals because they're much more convenient and easier to take care of. This is also quite interesting when we relate that to the traditional culture, because some garments like hanbok actually have very vivid and intense saturated colors. We think about obangsek, that type of palette. We think about sekdong, that kind of pattern that has this very bold reds, greens, blues, and it doesn't make a lot of sense that suddenly we are shifting to these neutrals. But at the same time, those garments like hanbok also have very soft palettes, like for example, pastel colors. In Korean, there's this word that is tanahada, which basically means this like less saturated but very high luminosity, bright colors. And I feel like those are similar to the neutrals that a lot of people are gravitating towards to these days.
Right, what you said makes a lot of sense. So cultural norms and peer influence really shape color choices, especially for young people. And that's really interesting because it's not just about personal taste, but obviously culture and history may also connect to why Koreans have historically worn a lot of white. So Grace, can you tell us more about that?
Sure. In fact, Koreans have originally worn a lot of white clothing in the past, so much so that they were dubbed by some as the people of white. Lots of Koreans chose to wear white since it was considered to represent light and symbolize the sun. However, we all know that white clothing tends to get dirty very easily. So once Korea started becoming more industrialized, people started wearing more practical, easier to take care for colors like black or other more neutral colors. The preference for white cars, like Fabio mentioned, is also said to stem from this practical aspect of it, the fact that it's easier to maintain and keep clean. And I also chose to get a white car for this reason, even though I originally wanted a black metallic car, just because I heard that black is just such a hard color to take care of.
So I kind of feel this because when I got my car, I wanted to do it as like a two-tone color. So I actually ended up getting the roof is white and then the body of the car is navy. But I remember people around me, there were some people who were telling me, advising me against it, and they told me to get white.
Really?
They're saying, what? You're supposed to get white. Like, it's the most obvious thing.
Just because it's clean or easier to clean.
Right. I mean, there's so
doesn't
many
get dirty.
reasons for it, so I get that. So all this is really interesting, but obviously practicality obviously plays a huge part as it leads to people to gravitate towards white for cars like Grace did. So it's funny how both colors, black and white, will stay at the center of Korean style even now. And to hear how people in other parts of the world see color, we'll be talking to a young guest from overseas who will share his perspective on color and culture. And that's coming up right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Francois, a millennial from America, who's currently living in Seoul. So hi, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me here again.
Thank you for coming back. So is there a color that's especially popular in the States? Why do you think that is?
I think most Americans tend to wear blue, especially me growing up. I wore blue a lot because my family would always give me clothes to wear, like, here, wear this, and it's always blue. Sometimes white, but usually blue because I think it kind of symbolizes like trust. I remember studying American history and culture growing up, and I can remember during the American Revolutionary War, a lot of the soldiers wore blue for their uniforms, also during the Civil War. So I'm not exactly sure like the deep cultural resonance with blue, but for the most part, Americans love blue.
Francois, when people choose things like clothes or cars, do they also usually consider the color?
Sure. For clothes, especially, a lot of people will choose neutral colors like beige, gray, blue, sometimes white, because these colors can go with everything, especially if you're rushing in the morning. You don't have time to choose, the best outfit. You just grab something from the closet that goes together very quickly. So for clothes, yeah, usually a lot of neutral colors. For cars, some people can choose red cars because they want to show they have like some passion or a fiery spirit for life. Most of the time, people choose blues or white cars because they're easier on the eye and the insurance isn't so expensive.
Have you noticed any differences in what colors mean in Korean culture and your own culture?
When I arrived in Korea, I saw a lot of Koreans wearing blues or browns, darker colored clothes. But as my time in Korea progressed, I saw more whites. And these days, I could see a lot of reds. before I couldn't see reds. And I was wondering why was that? Because Americans will try the color red or other quote unquote risque colors. So yeah, I think in Korea, maybe people are more prudent and a little bit more cautious about the colors that they choose to wear. When I went to Gyeongbokgung Palace, I tried on the red king hanbok, and when I was walking through the palace in the street, everyone was like, "Whoa, the king, the king!" I'm like, "Yeah, cool." I didn't get this attention when I wore the blue hanbok, but with the red hanbok, yeah, so much attention.
So I guess if you want attention, red hanbok is the choice. As usual.
Yeah,
thank you
most
so much.
definitely.
It's always great,
But I
great to
wouldn't
have
wear it
you.
all the time because I don't want
Right.
too many eyes, looking at me. So
Yeah, that one's an intense color.
That is. Okay.
yes.
As usual, thank you so much for coming on. It's always great to have you.
Oh, also, I want to show you. I'm also preparing my black puffer coat for the winter, so I'm right
That's
along.
good.
That makes all of us on the show have black pattern
Yes.
coats. Great, I see.
We will all be matching.
We should have all worn
Yes.
our coats today. Great. So thank you so much for coming on
Exactly.
today.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you.
So we just heard from our guest in the US about how people there see colors and what influences their choices. So colors can carry a lot of meaning, not just personal style, but also cultural symbolism. That makes me curious. If you think about Korea as a country, so what color first pops into your mind, Grace?
When I think of Korea, I usually think of red and blue. Mainly because they're the colors on the Korean flag that stick out to me. And I also think of red, especially because I think of Korean soccer for some reason. Like everyone that roots for the Korean national soccer team wear red. So seeing that during the World Cup over the years just stuck with me and remains really vivid in my mind.
I agree. I think because it's always been red and because red is such a vivid color, it
Yes.
stands out to me too. So what about you, Fabio?
Well, very interesting because for me, I feel like white is a little bit more representative. Maybe it's because it's the biggest color in the flag.
Right.
And at the same time, since we are talking about palaces, I'm thinking about Gyeongbokgung, for example, and I'm thinking about Danjeong too. Well, Danjeong is this architectural style where you have this greens and lots of vibrant colors, and that green really represents very well this kind of like synergy with nature, tradition, and also futurism, which pretty much shows the nature of Korea. And so for some reason, I'm sticking to that green.
So colors might seem simple, but they can carry a lot of meaning, especially when we think of a country. So we just shared what colors come to mind when we think of Korea, but we were curious to see what you thought. So we asked our viewers on the Arirang News YouTube channel which color best represents Korea. So let's take a look at the results. So when asked which color best represents Korea, 45% of respondents chose white, making it the most popular choice. And blue came in second with 33%, followed by red at 19%. Black was actually the least selected with only 3% of people identifying it as representative. Also, white came out on top, so that really shows how strong that traditional image is and kind of matches with what you, Fabio, said. But blue being second, that's kind of surprising. Maybe it reminds people of the Korean flag or maybe even Korea's more cool, modern image. And, it's not just Korea, though. Every country has colors that symbolize its culture, right, Grace?
Of course. Honestly, I think that flags play a huge part in what colors that we associate certain countries with. For example, for the United States, I always picture red, white, and blue because of the flag. And for Italy, I always think of green, white, and red. And it's funny because, like in Korea, Japan also garnered some attention at one point because the Japanese people are also known to wear lots of black. And there was this one photo circulating where it showed everyone in the subway in all black, like in the same type of, attire.
What about you? Do you know any other colors people associate with?
Well, I'm thinking, for example, China has a very strong branding when it comes to color because not only the flag is red with this kind of golden yellow, but when you think about traditional garments or souvenirs, it always comes in that kind of like color palette. Sweden is also a very good example because one of its biggest corporations, which is IKEA, shares the same colors with the traditional flag, which is a very interesting case. And then for my country, Spain, I'm thinking obviously about the flag colors again, which are red and yellow, but also because of cultural reasons, because we have the mandon, which is this type of cloth that we use for bullfighting, and it has the same colors. So it's very interesting to see how tradition also can play a big part on how we see the colors that represent a country.
I agree. So today's conversation reminds us that colors aren't just visuals, they tell stories. Stories are where we come from, how we live, and what we value. And it's fun to see how colors can mean so much in different ways: pride, culture, and even personality. So whether you love the calm of blue or the purity of white, every color says something about how we see ourselves and the world around us. And while we don't always think about it, our choices may change over time. Color will always remain one of the simplest yet most powerful ways to actually express who we are. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation by NewsGen. We'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Grace.
Thanks for having me.
For coming in, also Fabio.
Thanks for having me.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you have the best day. We are
News Generation.